Hello and welcome to the Physiology of Endurance Running podcast. I'm Owain. I'm joined by Dan. How's it going, Dan?
Yeah, good. Yeah, good. Enjoying running lots of miles at a minute.
Yep.
187k last week. Trying to match that at least this week. Yeah, I'm feeling mostly good. Try to tag in with Jake Smith for a few sessions, and he's put me through my paces. He's chilling, and I'm working pretty hard. But yeah, survived so far. Yeah, how are you doing?
Good. Yeah. Another 10-hour week in the books for me. So
Yeah, I've seen your
yeah,
Strava
pretty
graph
happy.
creeping up.
Yeah, yeah. No, feeling good. Yeah, feeling good. Enjoying my sessions as well. And it's nice now. It's not baking hot.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah,
20
almost felt
degrees.
cold this morning.
I know, 20 degrees, 18 degrees. That's a nice temperature. Even for sessions, that's not too bad, is it?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
especially when you've come from like 30 degrees. Feels, like you said, bit cool. Bit cool.
yeah,
Yeah. Special shout out as well because graduated today, Masters of Science.
yeah.
Congratulations. Do you feel intelligent now?
I don't feel like anything's changed. Yeah, I don't know. We were saying beforehand, weren't we? I think the can you call it magic? I think it wears off when you do it a second time.
Yeah.
Um,
Especially
yeah,
delayed gratification and that you finished everything in January and it's now July. It's quite a while ago
yeah,
you sort of finished.
yeah. That and I think it's just not to minimize it. Like I really enjoy. We can talk about this maybe more in another episode or something. But like I really enjoyed my masters. I really enjoyed the research. Like had such a good time, but it's also not like I still want to keep going and doing more. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, there is that element of as well of like, well, what's next? Yeah, which is probably. I mean, it's probably something that most people listening to this that are runners are like. Like you do a big race and then 2 days later you're like, what's next?
Yeah, like marathon
Um,
blues, isn't it? Like, yeah, come down.
yeah,
Like you do your big race, and if it's gone badly or if it's gone well, the next day you might be in a high for a couple of days, aren't you? And then by Wednesday, you're fit.
yeah,
You're a bit sore still. You've got nothing to do. You can't really run yet. It's a bit of a down period, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. But no, it's fine. Yeah, had a camera pointed in my face all day, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but no, all good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I saw some good footage of you throwing your hat in the air in Cardiff Bay.
yeah. I didn't lose it in the bay.
Yeah,
That's the main thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well done. Big race this weekend.
yeah. So I guess it'll be done when this comes out. But yeah, the Snowdon International race, Snowdon Mountain race. But from Llanberis up to the top of Snowdon and back, so 5 miles of climbing, 5 miles of descending. And it's normally pretty loaded as well. Like it's an international race. There is there's always a team from Italy, and then yeah, England, Scotland, Wales definitely send teams.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's a race that's gone on for years, isn't it? It's quite historic. And
yeah, like the sort of highlights of it get shown on TV like the next day, sort of thing. Yeah, and it should be. I'm really interested in like well, like obviously like keen to have a crack, keen to see how it goes, but like a really long climb as well. I haven't. I need to double check. I think like a really front of the field time up to the top is like 50 minutes. So for me, it's gonna be I don't know. Thinking off the top of my head, if I could do it under 60 minutes, that would be amazing. But like 60 minutes of climbing at fairly
I think it'll
hard
suit you though
effort.
because it's a good grade. It's not. It's not a super steep gate. It's up the railway, right? Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
right? So it's
yeah.
not
So it's
actually.
not technical.
Yeah,
It's
and again,
just
I think
continuous.
the grade is not crazy because a train goes up it.
Yeah,
So I think that will suit you. You can get away with just fitness, I think, for
yeah,
those sort of climbs. And then the descent is where sometimes you struggle a bit, but it's easy running, isn't it?
yeah. And then based on a race I did a couple of weeks ago, my descending was actually quite good at that race. Yeah, which is nice little confidence boost. And I also know, like, well, I wasn't looking at anything whilst I was racing, but I basically did the entire race sort of not intentionally, but stayed under my second threshold. Like, I know I messaged you after, and I was like, maybe I should have pushed a bit more because it was like a 40-minute race, and I didn't go above my threshold for basically the entire thing. But I was sort of pushing fairly hard on some of the climbs, some like steeper climbs than this will be this weekend, and staying below my threshold. So it's like, to me, that's quite a good sign that yeah, I can push quite hard. Like, it's,
Yeah.
the worst
Don't
thing
be
is when you,
afraid.
you get to the climb and you're like, feel like you're shuffling and you're already like just
Mhm.
heart rate sky high, and you're like, well, I've got an hour of this.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I don't know whether I'll just go to feel or I'll actually put like an alert on my watch to just buzz if I go above the second threshold, because we're talking about physiology, right? Like, I shouldn't be able to sustain that effort going all
but
the way up, but
yeah, but
then
the intensity is obviously going to be less going
yeah,
down.
yeah,
So I definitely wouldn't put an alert on because I wouldn't be bothered at all if in the
yeah,
last 20 minutes of the
yeah,
climb
yeah,
you're above.
yeah,
Because actually,
yeah,
you obviously you've still got racing to go, but you can afford to recover a little bit and then on the downhill and then just push on if
yeah,
you can.
yeah. And then yeah, to think it like I've done some thinking about like, yeah, heart rate and stuff, and then other things like priming. The race briefing is 30 minutes before, so I'm like, okay, how do I fit this in? And my thinking
But it's
now is
quite,
that
yeah,
I'm going to finish the bout of priming 30 minutes before, and then I'm just going to jog around the outside of the field and um, listen to the briefing, because I think they do make you show up for that, because
yeah.
you do sometimes have to carry gear. Um,
Again, I guess you probably need a. Do you need a good to get a good position in the first?
so I think again, I need to double check. Like, I'm up there for a few days before, so I'll double check. Like, I'll basically look at the sort of first K.
Yeah. So how many
I
runners
think
is it going to be? How narrow is it? Do you need to
yeah, it's
actually
like
put in a bit of a hard effort in the first mile to get to get a good position on the climb?
yeah,
Because sometimes it's
it's
really hard to pass people, isn't it?
it's 500 people, so it's not too big. And I think it's like 800 or so meters of road, and then you turn and sort of take the climb. So yeah, I don't know. I guess you sort of see how these things go, right? Like, you could push yourself really near the front and think like, oh, I need to be ready to sort of like really go for it to get a good spot, and then everyone jogs because they don't want to don't want to go hard on the road bit. But
I reckon people will
yeah,
fly off, but I think
I
that's probably
think
the
at the
wrong
same
move.
time, yeah,
I'd take your time and just
yeah.
if it's only 500, you'd be able to pass people all the way up Snowdon, wouldn't
Yeah.
you?
And I think some of that will depend on the weather as well. Because if it's nice weather, you just get like tourists and climbers up on the mountain, which then adds into it. Like, I watched some videos from the summit on a nice day, and it looks a bit chaotic. Like, they do sort of have you separated, but yeah, it's obviously a busy summit. So but no, it should be really good fun. Like, a really cool. Yeah, like, there's not many races in the UK where you are doing that long a climb, but also at that high intensity, because if you're doing that long a climb, you're in a big mountain ultra, and yeah, you're keeping intensity low. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
looking
No,
forward
it's
to it.
cool.
Yeah,
I'm jealous. I'd like to give that a go one year.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool race.
Nice. So before we get into today's episode, let's give a shout out to Saw, our sponsors. So exciting announcement from Saw. They've just announced a partnership with the running brand Ultra. I never quite know how to say it, but we'll go with Ultra, which are an American-based brand. Probably not that well known in the UK, but certainly like in the ultra scene and in the trail scene, that's probably their big space, isn't it? Known
Yeah,
for having wide toe boxes to help with like good foot health and splaying your feet and reasonably low drops as well. But they've just released this partnership with Saw, and they've released some very nice looking kit and shoes as well, which is exciting because Saw don't do shoe stuff historically, but they've got. I'm just looking here on their website. Uh, Mont Blanc carbon trail shoes, very nice colorway, and then they've got a t-shirt here which again looks beautiful. Do you want to go into the spec of that, Owain?
yeah. So it will be. I imagine it's going to be like their other trail kit, where it's designed slightly reinforced around where you'd normally wear a pack, which we mentioned on a previous episode, didn't we? I think that's such a cool idea. Yeah, having integrated kit that works, together with the other kit that you're wearing, rather than sort of a hodgepodge. a vest and then some shorts. So yeah, it'll be reinforced around where your sort of normal trail and ultra running pack would sit. And then the shorts have loops for carrying collapsible hiking poles as well, and a big sort of waist belt for all your gear. So you might not even need a pack if you buy the shorts. You'll
Yeah.
just get everything around your waist.
Yeah, no, it looks super nice as you expect with any sort of kit. So yeah, if you're into trail stuff, go check it out. Uh, and we've got a nice range of other summer wear on there as well. So yeah, go check them out. Really nice stuff. Um, so today we're going to talk about training loads and like I guess how this is one that I've had my eye on doing for a while, but I think one of the things that came out of that podcast episode we did with Sir Pock and or James, whatever you want to call him, was his idea that actually the way to get fit long term is just to accumulate as much load as you can in a way that's sustainable. So you can't. It's not just go and smash 1 week of really high mileage and loads of intensity. It's how can you over 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 months, a year, 2 years accumulate as much training load uh, in quotation marks as you can. And that was sort of echoed by Alistair Brownlee last week on the podcast. So this idea of trying to just bank as many hours as he can, accumulate his highest training load as he can, and that's how he would design his training. So that got me thinking, like, well, do people actually know what actually is training loads? Like, how do we define it? What are the strengths and weaknesses of ways to quantify training load? And there's also a really nice paper that's just come out, which has compared different ways of measuring training loads and seeing how well that quantifies to the drop in performance you see over the course of a training bout. So that's the topic for today. How should we start off? Defining it, I guess, Owain?
Yeah, defining it, and then I think we were going to talk about like single bout of exercise training load, quantification, and then some of the metrics we were going to go into as well, weren't we? Um,
Yeah,
as well as we can, because a lot of them are black box, which we'll
yeah,
sort of
yeah,
come on to.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I guess like the whole idea of training load is just to, as a concept, it's just quantifying like how much stress is your body under. And we can think of it in like two ways. You can have like internal training load and external training load. And external load is like how work output of the body, like how many Ks have you run, like what's the speed you're running at, like that's quantifying how much work is my body doing. Like in cycling, it's the obvious one to explain it because it's how much power output have you produced, how many kilojoules of work have you done. Not quite so simple in running to quantify the external stuff, but yeah, looking at speed, looking at distance covered, that tells you how much work we've done. But then we've got this idea of internal training load, which is more like what's the body's response to that? Because you could have two people, run 10K in 40 minutes. And for one person, that's an easy run. Their lactate will be 1. For someone else, that's a max effort. Their lactate is 10. And I've used lactate as an example there, but heart rate's obviously going to be very different. And the RPE, the perceived exertion score, is going to be very different. So I guess broadly speaking, training load is just when we're talking about it today, we're probably more talking about the internal load, aren't we? And just actually
yeah.
how much stress is the body under, both within a single session, but also over the course of weeks, months, years.
Yeah, and I would say as well. There's maybe a bit of a debate, and maybe this is what we come back to if we do a sort of follow up on this. That there's definitely an argument, like when you read into just even how platforms define training load, they seem to almost like argue about whether you should be using things like power. Like, not to spoil it, but one platform thinks power is the best thing, and then tries to sort of quantify everything based off of that or in comparison to that. But that's as you said, that's an external training load. And they do rightly point out that there's issues with internal training loads as a sort of measurement. Like as we've mentioned a lot, like heart rate will sort of lag behind effort, and then there'll be cardiac drift as well. And it lags behind effort in terms of the start of an interval. Like you can sort of be 30 seconds into an interval and your heart rate's not up, but then 30 seconds after the interval, your heart rate's still up. That's not accurately reflecting like the work that you've done, but it is reflecting what's happening internally. So already I've sort of like sown the seeds of doubt, right? Like what's right.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
that's sort of that's where the argument happens, isn't it? That's yeah.
yeah, and there's definitely strengths and weaknesses to every measure. And like, we're both big fans of heart rate, but it's also knowing what heart rate can tell you and what it can't tell you. Like for doing 10-second sprints, probably not the most helpful. For doing like a long tempo run, yeah, much more valuable there. So I guess that's what we're going to try and cover today. I guess one more add on there is like as a bit of an intro is when we're quantifying like training loads, pretty much every like system of doing it is using a marker of duration and then some marker of intensity. Because and using this idea that duration times intensity is going to give us a stress score. Because running flat out for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds doesn't take much out of you, but running flat out for 5 minutes is obviously going to cost a lot more. So yeah, I guess that's our starting point, isn't it? Working through my notes here.
Yeah, so I think the sort of the one that then got you thinking about this even more was then this paper that came out, right? Which is the DeLever, I think I said that right, DeLever et al., which tried to quantify, single session training load measures, and I don't know. I guess should we sort of quickly give a breakdown of the paper? I guess.
Yeah, I think so. So this was looking at the looking at response to different training sessions and using different training load metrics to quantify the stress. Basically, do you want me to talk through it, or are you going to go through it?
Do you mind? Yeah, you go.
Yeah. So basically, they did a performance trial before a session. So it's like a max effort performance trial to quantify like what their fresh performance capabilities were. And then they put them through on different days, either two different high intensity training sessions. One was more like sprint based, one was more VO2 max based. There was also a moderate intensity training session, they call it, but it's basically a threshold session, right? Is that your interpretation of it?
Yeah. So two by 12 minutes. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, we can go into the details of it, but using physiological anchor points to determine the intensity there. So it's basically a threshold effort. And then on another day, they did just a low intensity training session. So 4 different training sessions on different days. Did a performance trial before each one. They did a performance trial after each one to basically quantify what was the performance decline as a response of doing those training sessions. And that in itself is quite interesting. And probably no surprise, the long hit sessions gave the biggest fatigue response, and the performance decreased the most after that. Not very much after the low intensity training session. That's probably pretty obvious. But the main outcome of this study was during each of these training sessions, they looked at different ways of quantifying the stress of that training session and relating that to what was the decline in performance. So they looked at heart rate variability. So this is, people are quite familiar with this concept now of actually the regularity of the heart rate beat. So the variability in heart rate, if that's very high variability, it's indicative of low sympathetic stress, low adrenaline response, for example, that sort of thing. If you've got low variability, the opposite, high cortisol, high stress levels. And normally we think about it in like a rested state, but it also happens acutely after exercise. So they were looked at the heart rate variability response in the 5 minutes after the training session. I think it was 5 minutes in the time period after each training session. To look at that, they also used something called TRIMP or training impulse, which we should probably spend a bit of time talking about how we define that. Do you want to give that a crack?
Yeah, so that's a sort of formula. I've got it written down as Bannister, but not Roger Bannister, a different Bannister in like 1974 proposed this. Um, but basically, it's looking at it's an equation looking at what is it, max? It's like max heart rate
There's
minus
lots of
like
different
current
ways.
heart rate. Yeah,
There's lots of different TRIMP scores, but they're all using pretty much a marker of heart rate and a marker of duration.
yeah,
And I think
and then
I think the Bannister's TRIMP is looking at like the heart rate reserve,
yeah,
and then weighting that so that it's not linear. So that actually, if you're at 100% of your heart rate reserve, that's much harder, obviously, than being at 20% of your heart rate reserve. In a
yeah,
sort of like a lactate response in a exponential relationship. So it's basically using duration and heart rate on a nonlinear scale to give you a stress score, which is the same concept as TSS and lots of these other markers, which we'll probably talk a bit more about later, won't we?
yeah. They're all based off of TRIMP with like slight variations and
Yeah,
yeah updates to the formula. But
yeah,
yeah, TRIMP also like it needs you or it needs to know like your max heart rate. So that's where like if on something like Strava you get asked to sort of put in your max heart rate, or it will just update if it sees a higher heart rate as well. So yeah, to even be accurate to start with, it needs like this needs good data as well, doesn't it?
yeah. But it's also just a
Yeah,
model as well. It's a model,
yeah,
and all models can be good or bad depending on the data you give it and the context as well.
yeah.
So where we've got to heart rate variability, they looked at the TRIMP score, they looked at just RPE. So how hard did you find the session on a 6 to 20 scale? And then they interestingly used this NASA task load index, which is a questionnaire. I think it's a 5 point questionnaire designed by NASA to quantify how hard a task feels. I haven't got the 5 questions here. Have you got them?
I yeah, I do. It's almost yeah. It's I think it's maybe 6 questions.
6 questions.
It's not laid out very nicely to read on a screen, but it's yeah, it's just going from very low to very high and like perfect to failure on a continuum, but it's sort of like 20 points. So I don't know. You could almost call it like RP. Oh no, there's the Borg scale, isn't it? Is
Yeah,
that Borg scale 6 to 20?
yeah,
Um, yeah, it's sort of like that, but with different questions. So
yeah.
yeah, like one of
It's
them is
not.
like how hurried or rushed was the pace of the task. Um, how successful were you in accomplishing what you were asked to do? How insecure, discouraged, irritated, stressed, and annoyed were you?
Yeah, there's some
Yeah,
interesting questions, but they're not specific to exercise, are they? It's any task, whether it's a psychological task or something like that. So to summarize, then they looked at these 4 different training load metrics and did some analysis to see how well they correlated with the drop off in performance. And we've just probably taken the mickey about that NASA score a little bit, but that was pretty much the only one that accurately predicted how much of a performance decrement they were going to see. Like the TRIMP, the training impulse was useless basically. Heart rate variability, there was a little bit of relationship in that the the bigger the drop in heart rate variability, the the bigger the drop off in performance, but it wasn't statistically significant, and the correlation was quite poor, so it wasn't a good predictor. It wasn't a useful predictor. And then RPE, I think, was somewhere in the middle there. I haven't got it here. I've lost it. But
yeah, and
anyway,
I guess just thinking about it, like we just laughed at some of those questions, but I don't know, maybe we're biased because we're seeing the data in real time. But if had a session where you're feeling rubbish and it's going bad, like you probably are actually irritated
yeah,
and
yeah,
annoyed, and yeah, and you're going to say yeah, like I didn't do well on that. Whereas Trimp Trimp might not capture that quite as well. So actually, Yeah, that's maybe cheating for, especially for us as we're focusing on physiology, but actually bringing in some psychophysiology to it gets a much better picture of sort of what went on in the
Yeah, and
session.
it's intuitive, isn't it? Like if you feel like the session was really hard, it was probably really hard. Like um, and you go obviously having a big drop off in performance, and at the end of the day, it's your brain that drives your legs. And if your brain is saying I'm fatigued, then you are fatigued. You're
Yeah,
even if you have more to give, you're not going to do that if you think you're in a hole. Yeah.
yeah,
So I think maybe that's a bit of a spoiler for the rest of the episode in that maybe some of these metrics are oversold a little bit and we should just dial into how we're feeling. But this paper just came out recently and just again just prompted us to think, yeah, I think we need to do an episode on this. Like
yeah,
there were some rub relationships there, but actually the best predictor was pretty much to break it down, like how did it feel?
yeah,
And
yeah,
some of the other takeaways from this paper though is actually okay, this is looking at the stress of a training session, and they've said right. But one of the thoughts was one of the outcomes was a questionnaire best predicts performance drop off. But then the whole point of why do you want to quantify your training load is to assume that that training load is going to translate into training adaptation and improvement in performance. And like if you go back to what Sir Pock was saying, like the more training load you accumulate, the better you're going to be. But there's a few caveats there, I guess, in that just because you're doing a lot of work, does that necessarily mean it's going to translate into training adaptations and improvements in performance and to be better on race day? What are your
yeah.
thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, sort of one of the discussion points in this paper is that things like TRIMP seem to really overvalue time versus intensity. They don't seem to capture what's going on if you're doing something intense, which maybe as much as anything is because like we don't fully know what's going on. We don't know um, we don't know the exact input you need to get the exact output in terms of training. So if we don't know that at a mechanistic level necessarily, like how then can a number derived from a very small part of that ever hint at how this session is going to impact your racing in 3 months, right? Like we can't clearly say like okay, like doing this session is going to do X and doing this session is going to do Y. So trying to put a number on them, maybe we're just starting from not the best starting point,
Yeah,
but at the
but
same
just go
time, you
back to what
understand why it's useful because
yeah.
there's no point in saying, well, it's not going to be perfect, so let's not do it.
Yeah. I think it's just being aware of that. Like, um, again, going back to what you said earlier about if you're doing sprints, like heart rate doesn't actually get that high, and then it's switching off straight away. But actually, if you're doing 30-second reps, like flat out with 2 or 3 minutes recovery, that's going to feel really hard. Be a heart rate response, which is how like TRIMP and these like fitness scores tend to work. They're not really going to pick up that very much. I know if I go and do if I go and do 200s flat out, my heart rate might peak at 160, but I can run at 165 for a marathon. So actually, cardiovascularly, it's not that hard, but metabolically, it's really hard.
Yeah,
That's the main limiter there. So these scores are going to be good and bad at picking up different stress levels. If I was going to use lactate there as my key marker, then that's probably going to more accurately reflect intensity, but isn't going to reflect duration at all because if I do a 2 hour easy run, my lactate's going to be one at the start and one at the end.
yeah,
But that's going to be it's still going to take some fatigue and recovery time.
yeah. And one of the other thoughts I had just with this study, where they did this acute performance decrement test at the end. So after each of the, I think we said, but after each of those sessions, they did a time to exhaustion trial, and used that as to infer like how fatiguing the session was. I like my thought as well was like, well, if one runner has better durability than the other, they're going to do way better on that test. But then, how does the intensity of the exercise interact with durability? Like, it might not interact the same. So, if you've got really good durability, that threshold session might, be absolutely fine for you. There's just got, sort of thinking about like athletes' sort
Yeah.
of unique profiles as well.
Yeah.
Although, like, I don't like, I'm not saying it in a sort of, oh, I completely disagree with the paper. Like, I think the paper is really interesting and probably is barking up the right tree. But even then, it was 12 participants, wasn't it? Like, that's going to be 12 different responses to those sessions based on their own unique
Yeah.
physiology, and some of that is stuff that we can't define yet anyway. So again, you've got this, like, unique starting point, and maybe that's something else that these metrics can't capture in terms of us and everyone listening, is that if you're using like Strava fitness score, which is effectively just TRIMP, um, you know, being applied over a long period of time, that doesn't know if your durability is good or your VO2 max is good. So then it doesn't know how you're going to respond to the session. Um, there's so many variables going in that you just have to really like have some sort of caution with the numbers and not be strictly guided by them, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Let's dive into that Strava fitness score and like TSS is what Training Peaks use, and which is a platform we use. Um, there, one of the issues with these all of these metrics that platforms like this put out is they're all a bit black boxy, and that we don't quite know what formula they're using to generate the score. Like we got a little bit of detail. Like we know that they are using some sort of basically some sort of TRIMP score, but we don't know exactly how. Like Strava is definitely using a combination of heart rate and pace to produce its fitness score. I think the Training Peaks one, the TSS one, which stands for Training Stress Score, I think it's a bit interesting in that it's come from cycling,
Yeah,
and it basically defines it's looking at your threshold, and an hour's running at your functional threshold power, which is FTP, in cycling terms of power output you could sustain for an hour, or running terms of pace you could sustain for an hour. That's worth 100, and if you're above or below that, you're going to get a bigger or lower score, like in terms of like the intensity there. So they're using actually not heart rate at all. They're looking more at the output, and in running they use like the grade adjusted pace rather than just pace, which is probably going to improve the equation a little bit. But even then, it's not going to take into account things like the conditions or what's your fueling status before and after the session. And I think all of these variables, they're just they can never take into account all the variables that are going to influence how hard a session is. That's my main thought, I think.
yeah, and that Training Peaks one was the one we were referring to earlier, wasn't it? Where their view is that power in cycling is, well, I guess it's where they've come from. So then now that I imagine it was a case of platform was built for cyclists, runners started using it. How can we make this work for runners?
Yeah,
Um,
they call it RTSS, don't they? So
yeah, and
running
then they've got like
TSS.
HRTSS as well. They've got loads of different TSSs.
Yeah,
Um, which is interesting. Like I guess we've sort of mentioned that, if you could measure running power properly, um, that would be a really really useful, a way better way of quantifying external load and external work than pace, because pace is impacted by gradient and surface
you're
and
going to
even
get people
shoes.
saying you need to buy a stride pod now
Yeah, maybe
and
we're
look at
doing
your
an episode on
Garmin Power,
that.
which I bet I think that's a whole other episode. But
Yeah,
I'm very skeptical about all of these things. Like
yeah,
cycling power is very quantifiable. Like it's very easy to do. You're literally how much kilojoules of work are going into turning the cranks. Running, because and cycling is all positive power, whereas in running The problem is you do the equations, your power output is effectively zero because you're just putting work into the ground and then coming back onto the ground. And so it's going into realms of biomechanics and outside of my realms of understanding. But what I've been told is basically if you try and quantify it accurately, your power output is zero because the forces counteract each other. But no running power meter is I would trust, to be honest, or very accurate
No.
in giving you. It's all very black box. This is the formula. Just trust the numbers. And that's from me as a scientist. I'm going, well, I want to know how you're going about producing that.
Yeah, yeah, but
Tangent
yeah, no,
there, sorry.
it's interesting. It's interesting that they're using external work as their measure. Um, yeah, when and I think they say in their sort of their page about different TSSs that they think it's a better measure than heart rate, which like we just said, yeah, potentially, it's completely open for debate. One thing they do mention as well is that that they suggest that it can take into account that like time isn't so one of the issues that we haven't said yet is that some of these measures will value minute one as valuable as like minute 60, but that's not the case. Like if you do
Or as hard, maybe is a better
yeah,
way
it
of
was hard.
describing
Yeah,
it.
like if you do 60 minutes at marathon pace, like, or if you just do 1 minute at marathon pace, like that's not a problem. But once you get to minute 60, that's a really massive session
Yeah.
and has a huge training load.
But also more
Um,
importantly, that 60th minute is gonna feel a lot
yeah,
harder than that
yeah,
first minute. Um,
and have a different sort of physiological response as well, isn't it? Yeah, based on things like durability. Yeah, but they seem to claim that their running TSS can take that into account, but this is where it's black box and you don't know how.
yeah. You've got to
Um,
take their word for it.
yeah, and then if they're then you're also using their grade adjusted pace, which is also black box. You know,
Yeah.
it's probably pretty easy to reverse engineer grade adjusted pace,
Well,
but
it's just interesting looking at my Garmin grade adjusted pace versus my Strava grade
yeah,
adjusted pace.
yeah,
My Strava is always more generous than my Garmin. So I
yeah,
always just, believe Strava, obviously, because that's the better number. But they're,
yeah.
that's the problem with all
It's
of these scores. Like they're
yeah,
all so black boxy, you don't actually know how they're producing the metrics. And like we've
yeah,
talked about TSS there and training peaks, like the Strava fitness score, well, that's probably knows even less about you in terms of it's using heart rate, but it doesn't necessarily know your max heart rate. It definitely doesn't know your threshold heart rate. It can predict it, and Strava's probably not going to know your resting heart rate either unless you directly put it in, and that's going to change over time. I so
yeah.
I'll be
And
honest.
then
Go
I
on.
was going to say like in terms of just the theory of Strava's fitness score, like it's basic but fine. So it's just a very basic chronic training load. Well, no, acute training load taken away from chronic training load, and that equals your form. And then they say it's exponentially weighted. That's the black box bit over the last 42 days. Um, but then when you actually see it in practice, like it's just rubbish. Like it doesn't work. Like if you there's plenty of people posting online of their Strava fitness score going down as their performance improves. So it's not necessarily working, and maybe that's because they're building up a higher a higher sort of acute training load and a chronic training load. But like you just think on the face of it, just with like the first thing these things have to do is pass a smell test. And if you're running better, but the app is saying actually you're worse,
Yeah,
then you're just like it just doesn't matter at that point. Like
yeah,
it's lost the trust, doesn't it? So
yeah. Well, I can give you an example of that in that my highest like Strava fitness score and my Training Peaks TSS score ever was when I was overtrained going into London Marathon and around the worst race of my life, around like 2:27, and it was considerably lower when I went around 2:12 at Valencia.
Yeah.
So there's just a case study of one of just don't hang your hat on this one score and say, oh, because my fitness score is higher, I must be fitter. It doesn't work like that. Like we've already, and for a number of reasons. Like, I think there's two parts to it, aren't there? It's the one is this actually representing my training load, and it may or may not be doing that. But the second part is, does that training load translate into better fitness?
Yeah.
And I think we've gone through a few reasons why these scores probably don't accurately predict your training load. We've talked about like the effective duration. Like, are they actually good at capturing high intensity stuff? Seems weighted more to duration than intensity. It doesn't take into effect environmental conditions. So the heat, like you could argue that a heart rate is going to be a bit higher in the heat, but if you're using the TSS score, then that's not going to take that into account. It can't tell if you're at altitude or not. That's going to make a big impact. It doesn't. If you're in a calorie deficit, then that session is going to be a lot harder than if you're taking carbohydrates during that training bout. Any others? Any other factors I haven't thought of there? I'm sure there's some
I think
more.
even just like life stress,
Yeah,
like it's not going
yeah,
to take that into account, is it? Like if you've had a bad night's sleep,
yeah,
if work's stressful, if you spent all day out in the sun
yeah,
and you're feeling really hot when you start your session,
yeah.
like
There's
there's
just too many. I think there's just too many variables which you can never measure to really get a fitness score. So I think for me, like hypothetically, like training load is a good concept. We know if our bodies experience a lot of load over the last 6 weeks, and we can probably quantify that just by asking an athlete, "So how are you feeling? How hard has the last 6 weeks been? How well do you think you're tolerating the training?" And if they say, "Yeah, I'm tolerating it really well," then they are coping with the training load, and they can probably increase that training load.
yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
Yeah, go
Oh,
on.
sorry. I was gonna say I had like other thoughts as well, like with again, where you've got a training load that's being weighted over a certain time period. Like one of my sort of first thoughts is like, how does it deal with things like rest days? Because I know just from experience, I always felt like I used to use Runalyze as a platform, which is pretty similar to Training Peaks, and I always felt like it almost like really punished a rest day. Um, and again, it's where it's missing the context. Like, yeah, I didn't run that day because I was ill. That would have a greater impact on me in 3 weeks
Yeah,
than keeping my training load in the in that as they quantify like green zone.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Because just to
yeah,
reinforce what we've said, like all these training scores are looking at like a fixed window period. So how much work in quotation marks have you done in the last 4 weeks, 6 weeks? That's what we're typically looking at in terms of time frames. And if you can accumulate more of that chronically, that's just going to stack up and up and up. But then there's also an equation for the detraining that comes with stopping training. And again, that's a black box, like assuming that you use X amount of fitness for every 1 day of training you missed. And that's going to be so dependent upon the athlete. If they've been training for 10 years or if they've been training for 10 weeks, some of these things change very quickly and some of them don't. So it's just another flaw, I think, with the equations and the just any attempt to try and estimate like changes in fitness from these training load scores.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like as an example of that, I wrote down like he comes up a lot on a few podcasts, doesn't he? Niels van der Poel, the speed skater.
Hmm.
Like he was taking what was he? He was doing 5 days on, 2 days off.
Yeah,
Like I imagine that would look awful in some of these, but he won an Olympic gold.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, like yeah. I think the other sort of thought I had, and again, he's an example of it, is like if you have the same weekly training load, but you've done it over 5 days or 7 days, like there is a difference, isn't there? Like if you do 170 odd k over 5 days, you're going to feel absolutely wrecked by the end of it.
yeah,
But you've accumulated the same load. Um,
yeah,
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 so there is, yeah, and then how does that impact like potential for injuries and sort of everything that cascades off of that as well. Um, yeah, yeah, those are just some of my thoughts as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think um, so. That's, I guess, our thoughts on, does training, do these fitness scores actually predict how much training load you're actually under? And I guess our conclusion is no. The second part then is like, assuming they did, is that going to translate into better fitness as well? Because like load doesn't necessarily equal adaptation, and that's effectively what we want to try and do by training: drive a mechanism to create protein synthesis, uh, to then generate a favorable adaptation, whether that's increase the size of our heart and increase our stroke volume, or increase our amount of mitochondrial enzymes and the number and the function of our mitochondria, or capillarization within the muscles. Like, that's what we actually want to achieve, which is going to help us improve our VO2 max thresholds economy and then allow us to run faster. But one of the things that I think is a massive flaw in this whole concept of like training load scores is that intensity and duration just aren't you can't you can't make duration and intensity equivalent. There are certain adaptations you just can't achieve through intensity alone, but using this training load model, you could achieve the same training load score in lots of different ways. Like, you could just do, right, 7 days a week, high intensity interval training, and achieve the same training stress score as doing a more balanced program where you're mixing easy and intensity. And we know that one of them is probably going to lead to more favorable training improvements, fitness improvements than the other. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that a training stress score can never really reflect the fitness response, because fitness is not you. There's so many different elements to it, aren't there? Like,
Yeah, and I think it may be a good example of, yeah, where you can do different training and get to the same result. Is like it gets brought up a lot. Is it 1960, the Olympics in Rome?
yeah,
Maybe,
something like
but where
that.
you had that is it the 1500 final where you had Emil Zatopek, and I can't remember the other two.
You had an
But
Australian in there, didn't you?
and
Was it?
they trained in sort of three complete. Zatopek is like famous for sort of doing like basically 100 meter, 200 meter, 400 meter reps every single day. And
Pavo
then what?
Nurmi, was it? Pavo.
Yeah, possibly. We should have looked. I should have looked this one up before. But yeah,
Great analogy.
and then another competitor was literally just doing like easy running, and then one was doing something in the middle
Yeah.
of them, and they all finished right next to each other
First,
in an
second,
Olympic
third. Yeah,
final.
yeah.
Yeah, so again, I'm sure the training load scores would have given different scores, but then they all produce similar adaptations to run basically the same time. So if you can't, if a training load, I don't know, I don't even know what the right answer is. Should they have the same training load for their training, or should they actually be completely different? But then if they're
Well, I
completely
reckon
different,
I
how have
reckon
they?
now you're arguing in favour of training scores,
Yeah, potentially.
because they've got there in different ways, but maybe their training stress score was all the same. So it actually doesn't
Yeah,
matter. It is just about getting the highest number you can. But I would argue that we training evolution, what people have come to realize over the years, is that you can't go hard every day. You need to have these hard days and easy days, and it's probably not perfect to do moderately hard every day. You're better off having some variation in the loads between days, and some hard days and some easy days, to give you a chance to recover, and go hard when you need to go hard, and actually go easy enough to allow yourself to still go hard on the hard days. But the fitness scores are so much more blunt than that. It's just a generic stress marker.
yeah,
And I tell you what, if I did, I normally go hard 2 days a week and then 5 days of just easy mileage. If I did those 2 hard days back to back and then had 5 days of easy work, I think that would be harder and take more out of me than spreading them out a bit. But in theory, my training stress score will be the same.
yeah, Yeah.
Depending on how it's weighted, it might actually be that if I give 2 hard days first and then 5 days of easy stuff, then
Yeah,
uh,
and this
yeah,
was just one other little thought is that where you see them where they do end on if Sunday's the end of your week in the app, like
mm,
that also isn't how physiology works. They do need to keep rolling, don't they, as well, which is another thing.
yeah,
So bear in mind. I think now more of them do, but like yeah, you would see training stress scores or the platform's own version that sort of gives you your weekly score, and then you'd look back at your weekly score, but that's not how it sort of works, is it?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And again, it's going back to those other factors outside of training that will influence even like the same athlete, the same training stress score. If they are like, depending on what's going on in their life, they're going to have different responses to that.
yeah,
So
yeah,
even if you did exactly the same training week, like same volume, same amount of intensity, then actually, if one of them you've got lots of stress going on in your life, or one of them your kid isn't sleeping that week, and so you've only got 4 hours a night instead of 8 hours a night, uh, then that week is going to be so much harder, and you're not going to get the same training adaptations either. So I guess
yeah,
I think we're basically saying training. Don't pay too much training to the training scores.
yeah. I was going to say, what are our take homes? I think that one that I've said, because I think another, maybe we should have said at the start, another sort of prompt from this is that, like, as we've been coaching a few people now, and sort of the question has come up, like, what is TSS? What does it mean? Should I be paying attention to it? And sort of where I've left it, at least with like the people I'm coaching, is um, look at it for now and sort of build up an idea of how that number relates to how you feel and how your week's gone. So if you're thinking, oh, okay, like I've had a really good week of training, and I felt really good, like sort of pay attention to that, the TSS that week. And if you've had another week where you're sort of feeling really like, actually I've maybe overdone it a bit here, what's the TSS there? And sort of find out um, where your sort of good zone and good areas are. And going back to like the rest days, like one of the people I'm coaching just always has a rest day, one day a week. So I've said to them, we need to see how it reacts to those rest days, because I don't know how it's going to react, because partly because it's black box. Um,
Mm.
but we just sort of monitor it and build up a picture and see how it relates to the other things that you already know about training, about how it feels, and just knowing what training you're doing, and then sort of gradually bring it in. Like, don't just go all in immediately. Like, just let it run in the background, and then look at it in a few months' time.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I'm going to backpedal a little bit. I don't think they're completely useless. I think they're worth paying attention to, and they are broadly going to track with fitness
Yeah,
for the very reason that we've already said they tend to be weighted more to more to duration and intensity. Broadly speaking, they're going to have some indicator of how much training you're doing, and we know that doing more training is going to get you fitter. Like if I've done no training, then my training load score, whatever variable I'm using to measure that, is going to be really low. If I start running 3 or 4 days a week, then it's going to go up. And if I do 7 days a week, it's going to go up again. Uh, and that is going to broadly track with fitness. But don't hang your hat on it. Like I gave the example earlier, like where my training load is really, really high, but I perform really badly. Um, and even just looking at like across all the marathons I've done, there's not a very good relationship at all between the training load score that I arrive at marathon day with and how I run in the marathon, because it's just not that precise.
yeah,
Broad brushstroke, it's gonna, if you accumulate more load, you're gonna run better. And I don't think what Sir Pock, like James and Alistair were saying, was wrong at all. I think broadly speaking, you do need to accumulate as much load as you can. We just are not very good at quantifying that precisely.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess probably I wouldn't have expected him to anyway, but yeah, like there's a reason that James didn't come on and say, oh, you need to hit X TSS.
Yeah,
Like, it's just as a general, you just want to see it going up, but don't get bogged
yeah,
down in the
yeah,
in the exact number, and yeah, just see how it relates to you, see how it works for you as well. yeah, just what sort of one other example when I used Runlies, like I was saying, they had red, amber, grey, and then like green zones. And I found I actually got fittest like just not quite in the sort of green, optimal sort of TSS window. Like if it was just below that, so actually what they were saying wasn't, you're not actually getting that much fitter. I
Mm.
actually felt better whenever I went into that green zone of having, according to them, an adequate sort of increase in training load. Then I just felt rubbish for sort of a few weeks, and I was just like overtraining.
Yeah.
So that's just where it I found just letting it sort of do its thing in the background, and then reflecting on it was the best way to then figure out how does this relate to me.
Yeah, I think yeah. My Garmin's always telling me I'm just maintaining fitness, and I know I'm not maintaining fitness. And again, it's just another black box algorithm. Um, but yeah, I do think I I don't really pay attention to them, and any of the athletes I coach, I'm not looking at your TSS scores. What I am looking at is how many hours of training have you done, how much time have you spent in the different heart rate zones, especially if they're calibrated to a lactate test. Uh, and then looking, just speaking to them and going, actually, how do you feel in response to that?
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
think that's sort of a better way of doing it. Like trying to get some ideas of your internal load by looking at duration and intensity, by going, actually, how much zone one, zone two stuff did you do? How much threshold stuff did you do? How much stuff above threshold did you do? Uh, and actually, I think where training load probably does work reasonably well is if you have a really consistent week and actually you are doing pretty much the same sessions you do every single week, then that is going to more accurately predict what you do. Because even if it's undervaluing how much stress a threshold session is taken out of you, at least it's doing it systematically, like week to week to week.
yeah,
Whereas if you're mixing up all the sessions all the time, then yeah, it's probably not going to reflect how hard. It probably can't tell you the difference accurately between sprint interval training where you're doing 200-meter reps at 1500-meter pace, or you're doing K reps at threshold. There, it's not going to it's not going to be very good, which just goes back to that paper. That's what that effectively found, but it wasn't very good at distinguishing the stress between sessions. But if you're always
yeah,
repeating the same sessions, it doesn't matter too much.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I think using just common sense actually probably the most valuable input is just being honest with yourself and go, how do I feel? How how much load do I think I'm under? And where do I need to go from here? Do I need to am I in a place to increase my training load? Or
yeah,
do I need to hold it level, or actually do I need to back off a bit?
yeah,
And that's going to be dynamic depending on what else is going on in your life. What
yeah.
do you reckon?
I think
That's
that's
about how I operate, I would say.
yeah. I think that's a good way to think about it. Yeah, and just taking it cautiously and slowly as well. Not
Yeah,
trying to every week add a big lump of
yeah,
training, which
yeah.
hopefully everyone knows anyway.
I do think it is just systematically. I mean, this is what Alistair Brownlee said, wasn't it? About systematically just trying to do a little bit more and just monitor your response to that.
Yeah,
And sometimes you are going to get it wrong. You're going to do too much, but then it's even more important to like appreciate that, back off, and then start building up again.
yeah,
Because the classic case you see is if someone getting fixated on their mileage on Strava, uh, and it'll go, 100k, 110k, 120k, 130k, 140k, 150k, 160k, gets that that magical 100-mile a week marker, and then it goes to zero, and you have multiple weeks of zero,
yeah,
and that's just that. And you could do the same. Look, people getting obsessed with TSS scores or Strava fitness scores. It's monitoring like what responses and are you overdoing it or are you not? And I think again that takes experience and time, and you are going to get it wrong sometimes. But just because your watch says you're unproductive doesn't mean you should ramp up your training even more, because you are going to know much better about how you're feeling and how you're going to respond to doing more or less training depending on your perception of work rate, rather than whatever black box algorithm Strava or Garmin or Training Peaks come up with.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's maybe a good place to leave it.
Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah.
I reckon.
But no, it was a good chat, and yeah, maybe we'll see if we can get someone on that can tell us why we're wrong about training stress score.
I'm sure you could find someone who is who
Yeah,
would come and bat the other side, but that's my take and my
yeah,
a mix of anecdotal and research experience on it. Like doesn't doesn't not good predictors on a precise level, but globally is going to trap with fitness.
yeah,
Don't pay too much attention to it, and don't cry if it's going in the wrong direction.
yeah. Nice.
Nice. Should we
I
wrap it
guess
up there?
that's yeah. We'll leave it there for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess thanks as always for listening. Thanks Saul for sponsoring us, and yeah, we'll catch you again next time.
Yeah. Catch you again soon.